Okay, so I wanted to walk you through today's assignment so you understand what it is that we're doing. The assignment is here posted on Google Classroom. It's called Can a Poem Mean Anything? And we had that question come up yesterday, and there seemed to be a resounding yes to that. And I wanted to just get us to think about that a little bit. I think you got my opinion, which is that the answer is no, but that there can be many ways into a poem, and there can be many things that we can interpret within the poem, although I don't think we can ever go so far as to say any poem can mean anything. It's sort of like saying that any sentence can mean anything, that the sentence, I would like a cup of coffee, can mean make sure you play Pete, that the sentence, I would like a cup of coffee, can also mean please pay the babysitter, which it doesn't unless you're talking crazy code, which we're not. Okay. So here's this assignment. Can a poem mean anything? Let me open that up. Now, it's really important you read the directions on this because it looks like it's a lot, and it's really not. It's some, but it's not as much as it appears to be. The important notes here are that you'll know you're done when you've done 3 of the review questions. There's 11 listed. That's what looks like a lot. You're not doing 11, you're doing 3. And that you pick one of the wrap-up questions to respond to, not all 3. So if you just scroll down and start doing this without reading the directions, you'd think, I have to answer all of those? No. Read the directions. Pick 3. The idea is that hopefully we will pick different questions and we'll have an opportunity to talk about many of these on Monday. I want you to have this done by Sunday evening so I can be looking at your work so we can address it specifically on Monday. So, don't save it until Monday afternoon, please. The poem is The Heart by Stephen Crane, which I selected in part because you looked at it yesterday and in part because it's short. Short does not mean that it doesn't have a lot to say, however. After all, I wrote 11 questions off the top of my head about a 10-line poem. We'll get to those in a little bit. So here's the poem. In the desert, I saw a creature, naked, bestial, who, squatting upon the ground, held his heart in his hands and ate of it. I said, Is it good, friend? It is bitter, bitter, he answered. But I like it, because it is bitter and because it is my heart. There's different ways to read that poem. There's different ways to put intonation into the question and into the response. Is it good, friend? That indicates a kind of commonality between the asker and the creature. Is it good, friend? There's more of a question there. There's more of a doubt in that kind of tone. So how you hear the lines is going to change how you interpret what you think it means. It is bitter, bitter, he answered. Is he just giving an answer of how it tastes? It's bitter? Or is he saying, it is bitter, bitter? Is he really reinforcing it and trying to drive home the emotion that's connected with bitterness? That the flavor bitterness and the emotion bitterness have a lot in common. But I like it because it is bitter and because it is my heart. Well, is that really what he would sound like? But I like it because it is bitter and because it is my heart. Well, maybe there, with the emphasis on my, that changes how we read the poem. But I like it because it is bitter and because it is my heart. Well, with the emphasis on heart, that might change how we interpret the poem. So, how we hear the poem has a big impact on how we read the poem. So, can a poem mean anything? I'm still suggesting maybe not anything, But does it have multiple ways of being interpreted? Absolutely. And a lot of that has to do with how you hear the lines in your head, how you personally, as the reader, interact with the poem. Let's take a look at a couple of the questions. I'm not going to go through all these. Who or what is the creature? How can you tell? Later in the poem, the creature speaks and is called he. Does this change your thinking about who or what the creature is? Explain your thinking. What I'm asking you to do there is to really consider who or what this creature is. It's called a creature, and it's huddled on the ground eating its own heart, and yet it speaks and is called he. Speaking the way he does is something a human does. Is this a human being? Is it something else? I'm asking you to deal with 3 questions because I want you to think deeply about them and have a lot to say. Skip down to number 8, for example. Why is this poem told from the first person perspective? How would this poem be different if there were no I in the poem but included another person, but not I? For example, if the poem read this way, and let me scroll back up to the top. In the desert he saw a creature, naked, bestial, who, squatting on the ground, held his heart in his hands, and ate of it. He said, "Is it good, friend?" Instead of I said, I saw. How would it change if there were a different person here? Would that affect the meaning? I think it probably would. There's a reason, in other words, that the poet chose for the person interacting with the creature to be I. And when the reader reads the poem, we can ask the question, is the I in the poem the poet? Someone created by the poet to be the actor of the poem? Or are we, the readers, supposed to put ourselves into the poem so that when we say I, we mean I? In the creature I saw, in the desert I saw a creature. Me. Noller. In the desert I saw a creature, naked, bestial, who squatting upon the ground held his heart in his hands. Is this supposed to be my experience somehow? Can a poem mean anything? Maybe not. Can it mean an awful lot of different things? Absolutely. That was the point I was trying to make yesterday. Hopefully, in just my short demonstration here, I've shown you that I do believe that poems mean a great many different things. I stop short at saying a poem can mean anything. Why? I think that poetry has a kind of dignity in the same way as a mathematical proof or in a scientific theory. There's the law of the conservation of mass and energy. That mass or matter is neither created nor destroyed, but only converts into energy or into some other form of matter. There's this law of the universe. Why do we think so? Because we have evidence. 2 plus 2 is always 4. It's never 7. Why? We have evidence. We have mathematical proofs demonstrating why that works. SOHCAHTOA. You know what SOHCAHTOA is. SOHCAHTOA is a rule of mathematics that you use to prove the measure of a side if you have the opposite side and the hypotenuse. Right? Isn't that right? With poetry, we're trying to establish a proof of what it means by using the details within the poem. In the desert, I saw a creature, naked, bestial. Those details are what it is that we should be dealing with. Not trying to pretend that this is about a baseball game, or dogs playing poker, or eating macaroni and cheese with your nephews. Because it's not. It's not. It is about a number of different things, but it's not those. Once you're done with your 3 questions, you'll scroll down further to the wrap-up question. There are 3 more. You're going to answer 1. Looks like a lot, but it's not a lot. It's 1. You have 3 ways of responding to the wrap-up question. The first is a historical, biographical way of looking at the poem. Stephen Crane is somebody who wrote about the Civil War quite a bit and about the experience of war and what it does to people. He tended towards realism, which was if you're going to describe a battleground, you describe it as you would see it. You don't use a lot of exaggeration and poetic devices and metaphors and all that. You say the blood soaked into the earth, not rivers of red set free from the bonds of fertility. None of that. The blood soaked into the earth. But this poem is not realistic in that way. It is out there. It doesn't adhere to our expectations of what is real. So the question for the first one is, what might you say about what the poem means given his interest in war and the effect of war of those who fight in it? And if you want to talk about his style within that, go ahead. Secondly is we talk about poetry from the perspective of how we as readers think of their work as a whole. And one reviewer said that Stephen Crane's poetry is designed to stimulate the mind rather than arouse the heart. It's designed to get us to think rather than to get us to feel. Your job, if you pick number B, letter B, is to defend that position, to show how within this poem he's trying to get us to think about something rather than to really feel something deeply. Okay. You should also, within that discussion, be able to talk about what the poem means, because after all, what the poem means is closely tied up in what it is he's trying to get us to think. The third option is the kind of what do you think it means option, the reader response theory of literature interpretation. Provide a full interpretation of the complete meaning of the poem based on your reading. What that means is you're a smart person. You've read the poem. You've even thought about at least 3 of these review questions, and you can always read others to see if there's other hints here. But being a smart person who's read the poem and a reasonable reader, what do you think it means? And tell me why you think that that's true. Okay? That is what it is that I'd like you to do with this poem and the responses. Please make sure you follow those directions. I don't want anybody coming in telling me they spent 4 hours on this because they answered all 11 questions and then did all 3 of those other responses. I do want you to enjoy your weekend and enjoy your day. So come on Monday prepared to talk about those. I do want you to remember to have your work submitted by Sunday at about 4, so I have time to review what it is you had to say on these and organize some groups together. Okay? That's it. I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye.